But then I was able to come out with this one, you know, after doing the next. It's like playing with a medicine ball, and then you go to the next one, and somehow you're so relieved to say, "Ah, that's out of my life." That's a combination of collage, the capital and column in the background, the smaller one, is physically collage, and then I reproduced it in paint in the foreground. Going back to the boxes, now I'm going to show you very quickly a few mural commissions that I've done. I understand that some of you are working on murals here. I had never done it before. I have a friend who lives in the British Virgin Islands who has an ongoing commission for me, which is just a wonderful opportunity. I go there once a year, every February, and I paint murals. I never know in advance what I'm going to be doing. So I just go with my paints, and then we have an interaction together and talk about what she wants me to do. And it happens. This is actually in a niche that physically is about this deep. There's a wall there. It's painted in a room where there's a door, and the door looks out at St. John. And there's an overhang, roof, and columns. And when she's sitting in bed, I got her to sit in bed and show me where the roof line was for her in bed. And so I painted the roof line as if these were windows on either side of the door, and this is one of the windows. And she said one day she saw a boat going by, and she waited for it to appear over in the window, and then she went, whoops. This is a kind of Hockney-esque collage of photographs to give you some feeling for this mural. It's a room where I painted the ceiling and the walls. There's a niche that goes back in space. That's back here. And then I physically built out on these two areas wood that sits in front of the niche so that there's a light tucked behind it which illuminates the sculpture. And this is a door here going back into a bathroom. And then this goes off into her bedroom, and this side goes off into her dressing room. So it's that total space which I was working on. I really got a neck ache, let me tell you, holding your head back like this. It's a fairly low ceiling, so I could reach the ceiling. It's about that much higher than I was. You know how in the old days, when someone would commission a painting, they would put the person that commissioned it very reverently kneeling off on the side, pieta or whatever. Well, I had the client hanging off the balcony. Their two hands in this silver cup that she walks around with. It's a little joke between us. That took me 2 goes. So it's an interesting problem to stop. You have 5 weeks or 4 weeks. How much can you get done during that period of time? You don't want to make it look like it's halfway done and then she's got to live with it for a year. So I had to get to a place where I could stop and then go back and pick up where I left off. And then this is a shot just taken while I was working. I got a scaffolding. This is between a cistern wall and then a wall that is between 2 doors to 2 bedrooms. It's a very narrow space, and she wanted me to open up the space. So I did a traveler's palm and then kind of an architectural detail up there. And this is a parrot on one side of the traveler's palm. When she went down to take a look at how the parrot was coming along, her 2 poodles followed her, and Awesome, the smallest poodle, when she saw the feather, she leapt in the air to catch the feather and hit her teeth against the concrete. And I said, my God, that's the highest compliment that I could get. I mean, no matter what she said, it didn't matter. That Awesome had really made me feel pretty good. And then that gives you a feeling. I couldn't really get opposite it because it's so narrow of what the total mural looks like. And there's a little still life on the bottom there with a cast shadow to give the illusion of the light coming through the traveler's palm. Now we're jumping to a series of paintings from a very different way of working, where I would just scumble up the surface of a canvas, sort of like reading images in clouds. moving it around until I saw something, and then pulling something out. I used collage elements, but then decided not to glue them on, and I just reproduced them rather than gluing them onto the canvas. This was used in a magazine publication. They reversed it because they used it on the left-hand side of the book, and she would have been leading you off the page visually, so they flipped the painting. And I remember when I opened it up, I was trying to figure out what's wrong with this. It doesn't look like my work, and it took me a while to realize the thing had been flipped. At one point, I was asked to run a booth for a fair to raise money. And I painted a series of boards. You know those boards that you poke your head through and you get your photograph taken and you're really Superman or whatever it is that's painted on the board. And that interested me so much, the juxtaposition of a very human-like face and then with a cartoon surface. And I found some reproductions of old medieval tapestries from France. And I was so mesmerized by those tapestries, so I decided to do just that, to paint in the faces in a very different style in the hands. Here's a detail. You know the illustrator Maurice Stendhal? It's where he got his idea from that tapestry. This is taken verbatim from a collage, painted in black and white. My husband, who's an avid sailor, informed me that that piece of cloth is a tri-radial spinnaker. I didn't know. I've become interested in painting screens. I guess it harkens back to the days when I was involved with theater. And I'm so fascinated with taking the painting off the wall and creating an illusion of a garden or a piece of sculpture standing in your room just by painting it on a screen. So I painted this. It was in my exhibition at the Nicholas Roerich Museum, and I sold it, and I kind of miss it. I had it in my house for a while, and I liked what it did to the space. So I plan to do some more of this type of thing. This one, I read the story of two men that were sent down to Hades to capture Persephone and bring her back. And on their way, they were very tired. They got about halfway there, and they sat down on a bench. It was called the Seat of Lethe. And when they sat on the bench, it began to absorb them. And they forgot where they were going, and they became part of this bench. And I thought, it just kind of spoke to me. It was a very exciting idea. So I found a rock and a seat in the local graveyard in Ithaca, and a photographer whom I knew went out with me and took these photographs, and I did a whole series from that. I changed the background. It wasn't like that. There were gravestones going in the background. And it was cold. There wasn't a vine. I brought a vine from home. My husband was behind there holding this pot up in the air as the vine was wrapped around me. This is again in the gorge where I'd done those earlier watercourse way paintings. This is a